Sometimes I cannot help but laugh at the bourgeoisie and its defenders not coming to the logical conclusion about the lack of democracy in their own system. It's even funnier to see them make an argument against themselves without even realizing it. Case in point, I'd like to bring up something Slavoj Žižek brought up in a talk that he gave in Mark's bookshop in Manhattan on October 26. He pointed to a statement by Anne Applebaum, the woman who wrote that dreadfully misinformed book on the Soviet gulags. This writer actually reveals the truth behind the Occupy Wall Street, its need to exist, and what it needs to do. In her vulgar attempt to bash the movement, claiming they don't understand what freedom and democracy is, or how it works, she actually reveals the need to abolish capitalism. In one sense, the international Occupy movement's failure to produce sound legislative proposals is understandable. Both the sources of the global economic crisis and the solutions to it lie, by definition, outside the competence of local and national politicians. The emergence of an international protest movement without a coherent program is therefore not an accident. It reflects a deeper crisis, one without an obvious solution. Democracy is based on a rule of law. Democracy only works within distinct borders and among people who feel themselves to be a part of the same nation. A global community cannot be a national democracy, and a national democracy cannot command the allegiance of a billion-dollar global hedge fund with its headquarters in a tax haven and its employees scattered around the world. Unlike the Egyptians in Tahrir Square, to whom the New York protesters openly and ridiculously compare themselves, we have democratic institutions in the Western world. They are designed to reflect, at least crudely, the desire for political change within a given nation. But they cannot cope with the desire for global political change, nor can they control things that happen outside their borders. Although I still believe in globalization's economic and spiritual benefits, along with open borders, freedom of movement, and free trade. Globalization has clearly begun to undermine the legitimacy of Western democracies. Global activists, if they are not careful, will accelerate that decline. Protesters in London shout, "We need to have a process." Well, they already have a process. It's called the British political system, and if they don't figure out how to use it, they'll simply weaken it further. Listen to what she says here in a moment of honesty. But the sources of global economic crisis and the solutions to it lie, by definition, outside the competence of local and national politicians. Here she literally speaks the truth. Our political system cannot tackle the effects of international capitalism. The power of these transnational corporations have power beyond our political institutions and have at the most powerful national level. She even admits this thing we have, falsely called democracy, is incapable of solving the problem we face. The consequences of global capitalist financial dealings are due to their international character and are out of the control of democratic mechanisms. How much more truthful can she be? Thus, the truth is obvious. We don't have a democracy. Again, it is spoke here. National democracy cannot command the allegiance of a billion-dollar global hedge fund. If the powers that which control our economy, our country, and our destiny are beyond our control, then this is certainly no democracy. After this confusingly honest statement, she begins to dig the grave of capitalism much further. Although I still believe in globalization's economic and spiritual benefits, globalization has clearly begun to undermine the legitimacy of Western democracies. So now we have a direct admission that capitalism destroys democracy. At this point, some readers may become confused. What is she saying here? Is she saying that we should abolish capitalism? Is this turning into an anti-capitalist speech? It seems that way, or at least anyone who would draw that logical conclusion. However, she does answer this rhetorical question in the next paragraph. Global activists, if they are not careful, will accelerate that decline. Protesters in London shout, "We need to have a process." Well, they already have a process. It's called the British political system. And if they don't figure out how to use it, they'll simply weaken it further. After having very honestly shown that capitalism undermines democracy and that the so-called democracy we have cannot fix the problem, she turns around and tells us to use that very system that she just said doesn't work. to solve the problem. What has happened in this line of reasoning? How does she explain this blatant contradiction in her position? To her, I think there is none. She is saying something else. She is saying that we can do nothing. If we accept the system we have, then we must accept that it is beyond our control. If we do not, and try to build a mechanism to control that, we will destroy our own democracy. She draws the conclusion that capitalism is the problem, but then says there is nothing we can do about it. The solution is obvious. If capitalism is the problem, then we should get rid of capitalism.